Okay, so we're beginning now the eighth shiur, and we're going to finish this shiur. At the middle of last one, it was if you recall, it was taking a while. It took longer than expected to go through Ishtalshus. We were discussing Ishtalshus Kabbalah and Ishtalshus Azoyar, and we decided to make a pause. The emphasis, and now when I thought it over, so I think what we're going to do is we're instead of going as long as I would like in theory into Ishtalshus Kabbalah, Ishtalshus Azoyar. This was supposed to be 4 shiurim, between 4 and 6, and now it's become already 8. So what we're going to do is we're going to briefly run through it. We're not going to skip things over, but we're not going to discuss the inyanim at length, the Shlalshus HaKabbalah. We're going to complete it. We're going to summarize, sum up, complete the inyan. So we should get to understanding Shittas Chabad. And in Bli Neder, we will the next series, or the the one after Bli Neder, in the next set of in a future set of shiurim, we will expound on we'll talk further on some of the inyanim over here. Maybe a standalone shiurim, maybe we don't even need the whole series. But let's without losing too much focus on the point, let's sum up. Let's get to the Nakuda where we're holding, where we were discussing, and we'll see, and we'll move on from there. And I explained to you. So I explained. I promised you last shiur that it wasn't so clear at the end. So I promised last shiur I was going to quickly sum up briefly what we're discussing, and then things. So we discussed like this. Once we discussed already the Shittas Chabad versus the other Shittas. What is Shittas Chabad? Which Alter Rebbe says is this. Which Alter Rebbe, to put it in one word, is this poinunus, is the human, the individual himself, to be able to understand the likus and to be able to see things for what they are. What's the point of it? And then the Alter Rebbe and then the Middle Rebbe took it to the next step to make it the Nachlas HaKlal. But what's the point of it all? Be'etzem is the Rebbe Tachtoinu. This is the Alter Rebbe's shitta that the Alter Rebbe uses two midrashim, and the Alter Rebbe explains that the reason the Eibishter created it. Again, we don't know why. We don't know why. We know what the point is. Yeah, why you can never know why it's Ratzon, but we know what the point is. The point was to have a Rebbe Tachtoinu, which means to be able to perceive alikus. Everything should be able to be perceived as alikus. And we ran through that lechatchila was supposed to happen through seichel. So you saw the Marishan Pasha by looking at something. That's what it is. In anything, the way you see it is the way it is. So Adam Marishan was going to do it only through seichel. He wanted to do it through midas also. He wanted to be able to feel. That's why he ate from the Eitzadas, have a taste. And then so now we're have to elevate Saya minds and Saya hearts. We have to be able to elevate the way we have that animalistic. We have the Nefesh HaBahamis. We have that animal tendency to ourselves, which is. Not only impulse, which is feeling, and then we move. So that's what we need to do. Once we know that the kavanah is dir betachtoinim, says the Alter Rebbe, dir betachtoinim has to be in your head. It's to be in your own head. Yeah, you have to be able to perceive things. And Mashiach is going to be dir betachtoinim for everybody. Everybody's going to be able to perceive. So l'chure, all you need is what? Is this boinunus? No. The Rebbe himself explains in Tanya, no, Zboinus is not enough, because dir betachtoinim is not only the way you see something, it's also how you act, how you live. Be'etzem, the way you're supposed to live, if you are able to properly understand the Eibishter for what able to properly understand the likus and the Eibishter for what the Eibishter really wants. So there are 613 laws of nature, laws of living. I don't know if it's nature, laws of living is the best. Overall klolim. Many of which only around Zman HaBayis, but most of which only around Zman HaBayis. Yeah, but there's 613 ways that's be'etzem how you're supposed to live your life, and Lechatchila, Adam Marishan, and all the way to the Yavis and to Shvatim, they understood what they're supposed to do, but Poyul, they understood it by understanding the why. So they learned Kabbalah, what we call today Kabbalah. They understood the likus. By understanding a likus, they knew how to act, how to live, what they should do. Came Matan Torah and it changed. Came Matan Torah, the Eibishter gave everybody the rules of what to do. So now, now Matan Torah gave us we know now how to act. We know how to act. We don't know why to act. We don't know what the action means. We don't know the depth of understanding about Matan Torah. We know what we're supposed to do. You want to live how you would live if there was dir betachtoinim? These are the 613 things you would do if you had a klor hakorin elikus the way Elikus was, the way Elikus is. Then came the Beit HaMikdash, where you had both. Beis HaMikdash, you had Sai Hakora and Elikus. You're probably able to see that there's the physical, what you're seeing is not real. It's really there's an energy, there's a ur behind what we call in what Chassidus, what Kabbalah calls ur. You knew how to, okay. But so that was one area in the world where there was Dira B'Tachtonim all along. But you still had, just because now the Eibusha gives everybody half tax. Remember, they've moved off. We discussed this in the last year. We moved off what to understanding Elikus to acting Elikus, to acting the way you're supposed to act. Now, and a small group of people, just like there was always a small group of people that understood the Elikus behind it, the reason understood the ur behind it. Same thing like this. There could remain this small group of people that understood the Kabbalah, the Elikus behind it, the Yichudim behind it. Good. So all Yidden are doing Yichudim, putting on tefillin, putting up a mezuzah, not talking lashon hara. It's all Yichudim. It's all Yichudim. We know what the Yichudim, we know what it equals. We know what it equals. We know what you're supposed to do. We know what the Yichudim equal, what you're supposed to do. We don't know what we don't know the Yichudim. Okay? A number of people know the Yichudim also. Okay. Then we moved on from there. But the point, so the world has been moving towards. It started off only as knowing the Yichudim. Then it moved into everybody, a few people only knowing the Yichudim. Then it moved into everybody knowing the actions. The actions also created Dira B'Tachtonim the same way. More. By living your life the way you would by Dira B'Tachtonim, which we call, to keep things simple, we call when Mashiach will come. Yeah, we call Asalavai. By living your life and by acting, so there's two ways of living your life. That way you could see things the way you're going to see things, and you act the way you would act. So now by acting the way you would act, so we're creating a Dira B'Tachtonim. Everybody can create a Dira B'Tachtonim by every mitzvah. We're acting the way you could act. We're being miyachad yichud. We're doing the inyan, which prepares the world, which conditions the world, but makes things roy to be able to receive it. Okay. The understanding remained only by a select group of people as things went down. Then came the Zoya. Now we were holding in the middle of talking about Ishtalshlus HaZoya. It's a shear for its own. It's mamash a shear for its own, because I felt I won't do it justice by Kviyachol going into it. But let me keep it very, very briefly, just so we don't skip it over legamri. We discussed it was hidden, it was found. It was found, and it came to the hands of Moshe de Leon, a Makubal by the name of Moshe de Leon. He printed it, or he wrote it, he copied it over, and he sold it. Now, imagine I'm going to come today, and I'm going to tell everybody I have a secret. And the secret is I found a Ksav Yad from Rebbe Akiva. You know what? Let's keep it more in the time, in the erech of times, yeah? I found a new Sefer of the Rambam. Found the Sefer of the Rambam. I don't have it B'Ksav Yad Kodesh of the Rambam. But it's a new Sefer. The Rambam wrote a Sefer. The Ramban wrote a Sefer. I found it yesterday. How can I authenticate it? Trust me. Not mamish, but there was a lot of backlash to the Moshe de Leon. They sent from Eretz Yisrael, Rabbi Yitzchak de Menakoi, who was a Makubal from Eretz Yisrael, the Makubal from Eretz Yisrael. He came to investigate. He came to the Moshe de Leon's house. He was on the road. He was selling it. He met the Moshe de Leon. To think about how he managed to get him. There's no way of contacting people. So you have to be in the same town as him. And he met him. He met him in his town. And he asked him to see the original. And told him he has the original, but it's at home. So he told him they'll meet up in their house. But the Moshe de Leon was nifter before they were able to meet up. He was nifter on his travels and selling it. His wife seemed to think that he wrote it himself. That's what. Anyway, Yitzchak de Menakoi writes the whole arichas, and he's writing his whole when he thought it was real, then he thought it wasn't real, then he thought it was real. He writes the whole back and forth, and the end is missing. But they have the last part. The whole part is missing. The whole Ishtalshus, when he describes everything clearly, the whole Ishtalshus, Rabbi Yitzchak Menachai, as it ends with from the last papers that they have available, it does seem that Rabbi Yitzchak Menachai was at that point was thinking against it, that it's not from Rishon Bar Yochai. Eventually, though, but the last paper they do have, and the maskana from Rabbi Yitzchak Menachai was he authenticated it came from Rishon Bar Yochai. That seems to be where Rabbi Yitzchak Menachai ended up. That it was from Rishon Bar Yochai. But Poyol, it was Oymed B'Sofik. It was Oymed B'Sofik until came the Arizal. The Arizal looked at it. The Arizal had every once in a while that comes to the world, the Sabal Shem Tov, yeah, that's able to see things that is, the Arizal was able to tell you where the Kforim are, and the Arizal gave, the Arizal said, authenticated that it's on Rishon Bar Yochai. There was reasons behind it also. The Menachai himself brings the svaras behind it, but he authenticates the concept of Rishon Bar Yochai. He doesn't need to know the history. He doesn't need to know how it came and who had it. Yeah, the Marshal. According to many opinions, the Rambam had access. The Zohar was always available. That's the point. The Zohar wasn't found. There was a copy of the Zohar that was found, but the Zohar was, according to many opinions, the Zohar was, the Rebbe says so. The Rebbe seems to hold that the Rambam had the Zohar B'Sof Yomov and said had he seen this earlier, there seems to be rayas that the Rambam has certain quotes in the halachas that are quotes from the Zohar, and is a raya that the Rambam did see it. There are people that say fakert, but Poyol till the Arizal, these things were all the rayas at the time, 500 years ago, when they found it. More in the 30, he lived in the 1300s. Yeah, he lived in the Misporum in the 13th century, which means the 1300s. About 200 years before the Arizal, approximately, a little bit less. But anyway, he finds it, and it's the Arizal says mitzvah legalo izois achochma. He is makabel, and it's so you have so suddenly the Zohar now becomes accessible to anybody who wants it. Kabbalah becomes accessible. It's printed. The Sfarim printed. Rebbe Akiva or Avraham Avinu writes himself, Sefer Yetzirah, or Rebbe Akiva writes down the Torah of Avraham Avinu. The point is it's written. Suddenly, it's not only what you learned from your Rebbe, it's printed in a Sefer. Now, Kabbalah has to be, you can't just open a Sefer and know and understand Pshat. You have to be Makabal. It's called Kabbalah, something that's passed down from Rebbe to Talmud. But suddenly, for the first time, it's accessible to many more people. The minute it's B'dioya Laklaf, it's accessible to many more people. Now, the Torah Arizal also lechatchila wasn't supposed to be printed. So the Torah Arizal teaches it, teaches Zohar, and it teaches much deeper. The Arizal learns from Eliyahu. The Arizal is a young boy. His father's nifter. When he's 8 years old, they move to Mitzrayim. He has an uncle in Mitzrayim, a very wealthy person, and he builds behind his house. He builds a small house for the Arizal's mother, his sister, and the Arizal himself. They live there, and he spends 10 years in Mitzrayim, and he learns with Eliyahu Hanavi. He learns with. I'm clearly telling you, I'm running through this very quickly because I'm just trying to show how there's been a hishtalshlus. What was lechatchila taught from Rebbe to Talmud was suddenly written down, then discovered, hidden, and then discovered, and then once it's discovered, it's written, discovered, and more and more people have access to it. The Arizal learns. The Arizal from Eliyahu comes to Eretz Yisrael just a little bit before the Istalkus of the Ramak, who's the Rebbe of the Mekabolim in Tzfas at the time, and then the Arizal begins to teach the Kabbalah. The Arizal, that's why I don't want to, because each shlav I'm saying now is a couple of be'etzim is a shir, at least in the historical facts, which is why I'm just trying to keep the history. I'm trying to keep our mind on the ball, which is showing how it's broadened. Remember, mitzvahs at one time everybody gets all 613. It takes some time to learn it, like we know, to know exactly what to do. But the facts, the actions, the ma'isa, but there's also ishtal, right? The way we look at things, the way we act. We know now we're talking about the way we're supposed to look at things, and there's ishtalshlus, and the ishtalshlus is growing. You could see the access is becoming more and more accessible to more and more people. from writing the Zohar, which suddenly makes it accessible, to discovering the Zohar, which makes it much more accessible, to the Arizal teaching Torah Arizal, and other Sfarim are printed also. The Ramak writes, this reminds us, Sifrei Kabbalah starting to be written. Then comes Arizal teaches he starts teaching Talmidim with Reb Chaim Vital. He takes a Talmud, he takes something. There was a Mekubal, he lived in Yerushalayim at the time called Reb Chaim Vital. Reb Chaim Vital was much older than the Arizal, and he felt that Arizal needs to learn by him be'etzem. So we're learning it for longer. He felt the Arizal had to take his neshama every night and convince his neshama to come to Tzvas. Convince the neshama to come to learn by the Arizal. It works very hard to bring him over. Works very hard. So it takes a while for Reb Chaim Vital to come over to Tzvas. Eventually, Reb Chaim Vital comes over to Tzvas. He comes over to learn by the Arizal, and he doesn't understand. He doesn't remember anything. So the Arizal takes him one day, and they go on a boat, and they row out on the Kineres. They go down from Tzvas to Tveria. They will go down to Kineres, and they go down to some place in the middle of the Kineres, and the Arizal takes a cup and puts it into the water, and he tells him to drink it. In the Kineres is the Be'er Shel Miriam. And so the water, that the place where the Arizal went to was Be'er Shel Miriam. That's where it is. And he gave him water from the Be'er. And he told the Reb Chaim Vital to drink it. And from then, Reb Chaim Vital remembered everything that the Arizal taught him. And he writes it down, but he doesn't want to print it. Reb Chaim Vital gets sick. After the stalkers to the Arizal, Reb Chaim Vital gets sick. And they take his Sfarim, they start copying the Sfarim. While he's sick, they copy what he had written. So once people start getting access to it, Reb Chaim Vital works through it. He writes, he's upset, he wasn't going to print it, but he works through it, and he prints it, he publishes it properly, because if somebody starts copying bits and pieces here, that is Sfarim, it's not Mesudr. Reb Chaim Vital, the Ksom Reb Chaim Vital, it's the way that Arizal said it. It keeps expanding. It's similar to Sugi Gemara. It keeps expanding and expanding and going. You need to have it comprehensive. You need to have it printed. Anyway, it's printed. So suddenly there's access now to the Arizal's Torah, which becomes more accessible now. And slowly, more and more people are able to learn this Kabbalah. Comes about Shem Tov and is Megala Pnimiyas HaTorah, which is something we'll discuss. The difference in Pnimius and Soid is something that we'll discuss in a different shape. But he begins to be Megala Pnimius HaTorah. Makes it, tells people, teaches different things to people, how to live. Now, Rosh Hashanah, Tov Kuf Zayin, is the famous Aliyah Sanashama. The Baal Shem Tov has an Aliyah Sanashama. Baal Shem Tov thinks certain Yichudim, and by that, his neshama leaves his body and goes to Gan Eden. Comes to Gan Eden. He describes, the letter is printed in two different places. We discussed this. But he has the Aliyah neshama, and he gets to the Heichel HaMashiach. And he asks in the Heichel HaMashiach, Eimosai Ka'osimar, when are you coming? That is, by the way, the Baal Shem Tov, when there was a specific kitrug on a specific kehillah. Anyway, and there was two. There was one on Tov Kuf Zayin, there was one on Tov Kuf Yud. But I don't want to get off topic. So it's a letter about the Baal Shem Tov writes to his brother-in-law, Reb Gershon Kittever, who was at a time in Eretz Yisrael. He tells him, "Sa'asim emes ha'kasi mar," and he writes back, "L'chshei yafutzu meinesecha chutza." And if you remember, in the last year we discussed that it's actually, it goes further. There's two versions of the letter. The letter was written twice. Once it went and it never made it. The first time it never made it to Reb Gershon Kittever. So the Baal Shem Tov writes it again a second time. And it's shorter, and he says, I don't remember as much of it because time has gone on. And this is the letter. The second letter is one that's printed in Degel Machane Ephraim, the one I'm about to say. The first letter, the way it is, the first letter in the Toldos Yaakov Yosef, so it's printed, it continues. I'll apologize, I didn't look this over before the shir. I'm saying a little bit of memory, so the lashon might not be exact, but this is the lashon basically. Okay, and so the Baal Shem Tov says, so I begged. We've discussed this. Baal Shem Tov says, I begged. I asked them. So I asked Mashiach. I got very scared. I got very sad for the length of time that it's going to take. If you need to have, they have to, and people are going to know to me Yachid Yechudim like the Baal Shem Tov. To have a bunch of Baal Shem Tovs. In other words, Mashiach is going to take a very long time to come. So then I was taught, says Baal Shem Tov, I was taught 3 Yechudim to say. 3 Yechudim. 3 specific Sirufim to say. Or certain Kavanas to have. And then that's the shortcut. That's the way to bring Mashiach. And I asked to teach it, but I was not given a shus to teach, and I had to make a shua. I'm not going to teach it. So I asked, at least as the Baal Shem Tov, he's writing the Regression Kit. I asked if I can at least teach it to you. I was told no. So I can't. I'm sorry, I can't teach it to you. Nor of us. I'm going to tell you. What I'm going to tell you is that to think in the words of davening, that every word that you say, you don't think specific kavanas. Say that all the kavanas that should be, that exist in this letter. So if you say the word Baruch in the word Baruch, there's a lot of different kavanas. So the Eibusher should take the fact that you said the word Baruch, just like when you put on tefillin, it creates a yichud without you having to have the kavanah. If you have the kavanah, it's better for you. It's better. The mitzvah gets godfin, and it's better for you. These are things we'll discuss at a different time. But at the end of the day, doing the mitzvah is the yichud, is the main part of the yichud. So to say the word is the main part of the yichud. Say the word Baruch and have in mind that all the yichudim that exist in this letter, the Eibusher should be makabel that as if it's a kavanah. Okay, this letter's printed in these 2 different places. Now, in the Degamach and Ephraim is printed the second letter with v'chulu v'chulu. It doesn't say v'yedel yachid. And the Torah Yaakov it's printed with v'yedel yachid. It's important to know these 2 things. Okay, then comes the Baal Shem Tov teaches this to 60 Talmidim. Comes the Magid and teaches it to 120 Talmidim, and the Talmidei Magid become Rebbes in their own areas, and so you have now the tzaddik connecting the person to the Eibishter, and you have comes the Alter Rebbe and teaches everybody how to have the Tachtonim in your own mind. Yeah, the first part of the series that we explained what the Alter Rebbe, the Chiddush of the Alter Rebbe was. Yeah, everybody should have the Tachtonim in their own mind. Came the Mittler Rebbe and said that the Alter Rebbe started with a small group still. And then after Peterburg, that Rebbe began to teach it to everybody. But to teach it to everybody, you can't expect anymore. The focus has to go off emotion, off feeling, because not everybody can feel something. So you have to be a certain tzaddik to be able, a certain edelkeit. You have to have a neshama of a certain level to be able to feel the mamish, to be able to feel what you're thinking about. And therefore, the dogish, the emphasis is put on a bit more bittul. To lose yourself, to push it, to understand so deep that you lose your whole sense of, you lose yourself. The Eibush is so gross. And then that was what we discussed. Yeah, that was the Mittler Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe after Peterburg, and the Mittler Rebbe. And okay, so now we have like this. Since Matan Torah, so like this, the Eibush creates the world, and the Avodah Marishan. And then the Avodah Marishan begins to understand the Elikus. Then and teaches it to groups of people. Comes down, the Eibush teaches this, tells everybody how to act. For Dira B'Tachtonim, how to act. Okay, let's have it. The purpose of this is Dira B'Tachtonim is Elikus B'Goloi. It's possible to be able to perceive Elikus. To perceive Elikus, there's 2 things. There's perceiving Elikus, and then there's acting in the way, once you perceive Elikus, how you act. So it starts off with perceiving. Then the Eibush teaches everybody exactly how to act. Act this way, and you'll be able to perceive as well, eventually. Mashiach comes, everybody will be able to perceive as well. There are people that continuously, how to perceive these inyanim continues and continues. There are smaller groups of people, but it begins to broaden. Starts off in mamash, a select group, and then things start getting written and taught. The minute it's written, it's taught to a broader crowd. More people have access. And it grows. From Shimon Bayechai, it stays hidden. It's written, but it stays hidden. And it grows. Once Moshe Leon prints it, it grows even more. And then it grows to the Torah Arizal, which is then published, and then more people. So now more people are understanding not only the actions, understanding the Elikus, they're able to perceive Elikus more and more. And then comes the Baal Shem Tov, and then comes the Alter Rebbe, who makes it accessible to everybody. Everybody can now perceive Elikus. To a higher level, to a lower level, everybody can perceive Elikus to the best of their ability to understand. Okay. So now what? Now if you recall, the Alter Rebbe was in the Battle of Napoleon. The Alter Rebbe was against Napoleon. The Alter Rebbe was for the Zah. Yeah. Why? Because the Alter Rebbe said that you cannot elevate, that there's a limit. There's a limit. How much you can elevate is limited. Focus on yourself. Focus on understanding Elikus. And there's too many nisyonis involved with being able to elevate. You can't elevate everything. But then what happens is, once something becomes a fact, once something's a chiddush, but then eventually becomes a fact. Once something becomes a fact, it becomes built in to the way you do something. Give a typical example. Ask your average Lubavitcher Bacher. Ask him why to do a mitzvah. His answer won't be Gan Eden. And if you think about it, it's a chiddush nifla. Your average person, for thousands of years, your average person, ask them why they should do a mitzvah. The answer is, what's the purpose of the mitzvah? The answer is, you need a zutzayir chaliyah. My neshama, if I do the mitzvah, I'm going to get Gan Eden. There's nothing wrong with that. It's exactly what's going to happen. You do a mitzvah, you're going to go to Gan Eden. Yeah, sometimes we don't tell that enough to kids. Ask somebody, why shouldn't you do the Aveda? Why shouldn't you do the Aveda? I'm going to go to Gehenna. Ask your average Lubavitcher Bacher, we're not doing Aveda because you're bringing Klippah to the world. You're pushing off. We're working towards Dira B'Tachtonim, and by every Aveda, you're pushing it off. We say it as such a pash, such a pshit, do a mitzvah because of Dira B'Tachtonim, do an Aveda because it brings Klippah to the, don't do an Aveda because of the Klippah, because it sets us back. Every Aveda you do sets the whole world back. If you think about it, it's not a chiddush, but the fact that it's such a shittus by a bacher, that it's not only about Gan Eden and Gehenna. The reason to do a mitzvah is not because of Gan Eden. Not that you won't get Gan Eden, it's just not because of Gan Eden. It's so built in already now that the chidushim of chassidus become a fact. Once something in chassidus becomes a fact, once a chiddush becomes a fact, so you're able to take that and move a step further. Fakert. If you just remain with those facts, then you get burnt, you get fed up. There's no growth anymore. So Andrab, you keep growing. You keep growing. Things you could keep moving at another level. Lahavdil, you have this in extremism. Right? Once people do something that's crazy. Give them a year. It becomes something that say that people accept. Whatever. They don't accept. They might still think it's crazy, but they used to. You could then, the extremists then go to the next level. And that already becomes, that's pasnish. Goes to the next level. We could use, I'm not going to get into examples because I might hit too close to home for some people. But is lahavdil, you have the same thing in kedusha, in good. The minute you have something that's good that becomes a fact, so you could, it's called conditioned. We're conditioned. That's exactly what we're working towards, to make a lekos a fact, to make ourselves able to have the proper derher klor in a lekos we is designed to start with, yeah? So once certain things become established, you could then move it weiter. We're going to skip a little bit. We're not going to discuss the chiddush. Instead, in the Marash, we're going to, now the Rebbe Rashab, this Nakuda of Afatzas HaMayonis, meaning of Lech Sheyafutzu Melesecha, is printed in Kesef Shem Tov. And that's where it stayed. The Rebbe never discussed it. It wasn't again to discuss. The Nakuda was Dira B'Tachtonim in Kop. Because by the Alter Rebbe, what was needed was the Avodah the Chassid. Only. Focus. There are certain facts that need to be arrangekarped in every single person. His boinunus. That's it. Maisa ha-mitzvahs and his boinunus. Let's put it that way. Maisa ha-mitzvahs and his boinunus. By the Mittel Rebbe, the same thing. Maisa ha-mitzvahs and his boinunus. But it's a machtzedek, but a marash. Once there became a certain once that became a fact, that it's obvious what's life about, Maisa ha-mitzvahs and his boinunus. That's what we need to be doing. Now we're already conditioned to that. We can move on to the next step. And the next step is not only us, the next step is the broader, is the broader. Understand? Things keep moving. Just like Kabbalah, we kept learning, more and more people have access to Kabbalah as things became so things keep moving. And as things keep moving, so now, by the Marash, only once, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Marash only discusses it once, but discusses how suddenly by Yitzkislev, that it's all about, it's just a process. What the Baal Shem Tov did and what the Alter Rebbe did is the same thing that Moshe Rabbeinu did, and the same. It's all part of the process that is happening of preparing the world to be able to not totally lose ourselves when it comes to the B'tachtonim, when to be able to preparing the world to be able to live a life of perceiving Elikos. The Rebbe Rashab discussed it in one place. The Friedrich Rebbe, I'm going to jump ahead. After Friedrich Rebbe leaves Russia, Friedrich Rebbe goes to America. Friedrich Rebbe is looking for someone to be mavasis, to base, someone to move, someone to base things up. And Friedrich Rebbe goes to America and travels America to try and find a place to live. And when it comes time to, after 10 months, the Friedrich Rebbe says that America is not a place for Chassidus. It's not somewhere, it's not ready. It's not ready. It's not somewhere where we could bring it. And the Mitter Rebbe moves back and eventually moves to Otvatsk, to Varsha, and then to Otvatsk. In the Second World War, at the beginning of the war, the Mitter Rebbe the Friedrich Rebbe comes back to America. And then the Rebbe says, Klor, that I didn't choose America, I was pushed here. Because now is the time to be able to bring this even to America. America, meaning America meaning, in other words, a very a country of freedom on the one hand, but a similar freedom to Napoleon. Different. The key difference is that Napoleon felt. We discussed this, that Napoleon believed in Seichel Anushi, the human mind being the highest intellect of everything, but not only that, he was liberal to the extreme. Not liberal to the extreme that if you're, as they say in the expression goes, you're so open-minded that your brains fall out. If you were wrong for believing certain things. It's similar to what you're having today in some of the liberals today, where if you don't follow a certain shugna mahalach, let's say, yeah, there's no tolerance for anybody that's not liberal. A real liberal means you could be liberal, you could be not liberal. There's tolerance for everybody. Yeah, Napoleon wasn't tolerant of the things. Napoleon had the Sanhedrin of Rabbanim that had to answer him questions that he had in create the Sanhedrin, 71 Rabbanim that had to answer all the questions he had in Yiddishkeit, and he would decide whether it fit in with his whether it fit in with the thing, with the mahalach, with the whole mahalach. So America, Be'etzim is different to that extent, because America says fakert. You want to be, we're not going to tell you how to live. We're not going to dictate you how to live. But nevertheless, there was this nakuda of when you have that freedom, it becomes much harder on your own personal level. It becomes harder. That element stays very strong. But now is the time to elevate these inyanim. And how are we elevating it? In two ways, remember. All along, Dira B'tachtonim is in two ways. Dira B'tachtonim is in kop, is in understanding elikus, and Dira B'tachtonim is in maise. Dira B'tachtonim is in doing the actions, that the 613 rules of how life should work. And if we would understand elikus, if there would be Dira B'tachtonim b'poil, for everybody to see, everybody would live their life that way. 7 mitzvahs for B'nai Noach and 613 mitzvahs for every year. Everybody would live it. You wouldn't have to tell them. Just like you don't have to tell somebody to walk, to talk, to breathe. It happens. This is what the person knows, that's what you want to get something from down there. You have to walk. You want to live. You need to breathe. Everybody knows that. So you would know to do the mitzvahs. Yeah. So now that it's moved, now that it's Shoda Zoya and Angekart, once Chassidus once you went through the Alter Rebbe and the Mittel Rebbe, it became, the way we looked at things, those became acceptable, like, he says, what became fact. Once it became fact, so now you can move on to the next stage. And the next stage is to bring that fact to areas that weren't kalim, that weren't capable of having that fact beforehand. It was, if you would try beforehand, you would get ruined. It would hurt your own avodah, not only somebody else's avodah. Not only would you not, it wasn't ready. That part of the world wasn't ready. Now, as things move along and certain things become fact, it becomes more and more ready. So the Friedrich Rebbe begins to talk more about Fatsamayans. And until the Rebbe. Now, it says, okay, so that's clear. You understand? This is clear. So the Nakuta is like this. Let's keep it. This is all one word. Shittas Chabad, the Shittas says, Boinanus. One sec. Oh, what do you mean? Let's back off. I'm sorry. Let's try this again. The purpose of everything is Dira B'Tachtoinim. Dira B'Tachtoinim is Elokos B'Pshitas. In Elokos B'Pshitas, you live a certain way and you look at the world a certain way. The Eibusha told us how to live that way by Matan Torah. The Alter Rebbe taught us, the Baal Shem Tov taught us, the Alter Rebbe taught us how to see the world that way. The world, we now have it. It's clear. It's now we can bring that. Now, but we're continuing this process of working. We're continuing this process of it. We have it, and now we can bring it to other people. We can live in those areas. We can bring it to other people, to have that for other people to do ma'aseh mitzvahs, to live, do the actions of Mashiach, of how it will be b'direi b'tachtonim, to see the world, how we'll see the world by direi b'tachtonim, and that's it. So what's Shittas Chabad in a word? What's Yiddishkeit in a word? What's the purpose of Yidden going with everybody? Direi b'tachtonim. What's Yiddishkeit in the word? In the word is ma'aseh mitzvahs. Living direi b'tachtonim. What's Chabad in the world? In a word is perceiving the world the way we will by direi b'tachtonim. That's what it is. Mashiach said something else to the Baal Shem Tov. It's only going to come ksheyedu leyachid yichudim k'moischa. Now, the Rebbe discusses this. People ask the Rebbe. So first of all, remember the Degel Machane Ephraim doesn't say that. In the second letter that the Baal Shem Tov wrote to the Begeshen Kittavir, he writes v'chulu v'chulu. That itself is proof that the important part was the first part. If the Baal Shem Tov, if the important part was v'yedu leyachid yichudim k'moischa, so then that wouldn't be the part the Baal Shem Tov forgets or doesn't elaborate on. Right? That's number one. Very important to note. Both letters are from the Baal Shem Tov. This has been authentic, but says even by the authenticators of letters, they're able to date it back and to trace it back. Both letters are from the Baal Shem Tov. If it was important, if that was the ikir, if l'chsheifutzim and etzech meant nothing without the yedu liyachid, then right, then you don't miss out the important part. In addition to that, though, Ayat says it. In addition to that, it's like this. Somebody asked it to the Rebbe. There's a Yid in London by the name of Shimon Hershler, a fascinating Yid, and he went into Yechidus as a very young man, and he asked it to the Rebbe. And there's a couple of places where it's written also similar. But the Rebbe told him, first of all, the Rebbe's answer to him was that if you can't do the second part, it doesn't absolve you from the first part. It says that is when the Torah of Baal Shem Tov is going to go out. There's a vav. Yeah, and they will know. It's two separate things. Number one is number two is are you capable of being miyachad? Are you shaykh to that? Is that for you? That's for you. If you're a tzaddik or a certain person is able to do that, say them. Adrabah, that's what you should do. If you're not able to do that, if you're not on that level, it doesn't absolve you from understand? It's two different things. Some people, is for certain people, but who's capable of that? Everybody. That Rebbe Taish into Oisius. That Rebbe Taish Chassidus into Oisius that everybody can understand. So that's already capable for you. So you have to read the letter and see which part am I shaykh to. Yeah. I think it's clear. So now I'll mention one more thing before we conclude the shir. And that is a very interesting thing, a letter. The Rebbe writes to Ben Shem Tov. The Friedrich Rebbe wanted Ben Shem Tov in England. And Ben Shem Tov was in France. And in Tovshin Ches or Tovshin Tes, in Igris Chele Gimel, the Rebbe writes to Ben Shem Tov, telling him Ben Shem Tov's job was raising money. So in theory, he can raise the money anywhere. If the money's in France, who cares if the money comes from England or comes from France? Yeah, he was a shadar. He taught Chassidus, and he was raising money. But the Rebbe writes to him, no. The Magid sent his Talmidim, gave every one of the Talmidim a different yichud, a different kavanah, and to bring to their area. where they lived, that area needed this yichud. This area needs a different yichud. And every Talmud, where the area they went, they got the yichudim they needed for their area. We are, as the world becomes more ready for Mashiach, so we're able to elevate more and more grabkeit. So we are more grab. We are capable of less because we don't need to get so deep. Fakert. If we're able to get that deep, we'll get that deep, and then we won't elevate. We're much more mugushim, we're much more grab. We're able to perceive less, and we're able, therefore, to elevate the lower level. If we would perceive everything straight, we wouldn't necessarily elevate the shallow levels that we live at. But we live at a very shallow level, and we're able to elevate that. So we weren't given kavanas, yichudim. We were given actions. The Rebbe writes about the actions that you were told by the Rebbe to do, it's a certain yichud that's melubish in an action. Right? Just like putting on tefillin. I'm using the same example of tefillin because there's certain kavanas, there's really what's going on, a certain yichudim that are happening with the tefillin when you're putting on tefillin, but we don't know the yichudim. So we don't know the yichudim. We put on the tefillin which mirror those yichudim. Says the Rebbe to Ben Shemtiv, England needs certain yichudim. You were sent there. The actions that you're doing are needed in England, not in France. France has different yichudim. So I'm not. The point is, I'm not saying. I'm inferring that we see from here. I'm saying is we see from here clearly that there are certain actions. There are certain. Sometimes the Rebbe told somebody do a certain shlichus, a certain inyan in a certain place. It's all that's sometimes one of my points. V'yeda liyachid yichudim doesn't necessarily even have to be in v'yeda liyachid. Somebody could tell you the yichudim that to do without you even knowing it's yichudim. You could be doing actions that you don't even know are yichudim, and it's happening. The yichudim are happening. You understand? So okay, that's just what I'm referring. My point is that the point of everything is that we have a letter from the Baal Shem Tov that the Mashiach tells him that when people have to know, people have to know this your way of looking at the world. The Alter Rebbe taught us that way of looking at the world. Okay, about the Mashiach also told them that people have to know to do certain yichudim. The problem is that yichudim is not shaykh to everybody necessarily. The knowing the yichudim. So therefore, so if you're shaykh to that, man chashmei. If you're not shaykh to that, doesn't matter. The fact is that doesn't absolve you from the fact is that in the second letter, the Baal Shem Tov doesn't write that. The Baal Shem Tov tells Gershon Kittavit to have certain, the kavanah of tefillah should be wherever the kavanah is. Right? That's not specific yichudim. That's not knowing specific yichudim. Baal Shem Tov never tells him to know specific yichudim. It's not shaykh. The Baal Shem Tov tells him to have a more general kavanah that will lead towards that. And so that's okay. So is Mufsay Mechidish? Is Mufsay Mechidish? Is Mufsay a change in the Yashvi? No. From there's been a process all along. There's been a process. The Baal Shem Tov the Alter Rebbe didn't change the Baal Shem Tov. From the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid, the world was now ready for the Alter Rebbe, and it was then ready for the Torah of the Rebbe Rashab, and it was then ready for the Torah for the Friedrich Rebbe coming to America. Once that became ready for the Friedrich Rebbe to come to America, and then it became ready once Friedrich Rebbe came to America, became ready to teach other people, say how to look at the world and say how to act in the world. It became ready, more and more and more ready. That's the point. And I added as a Sofer that the V'yed Yachid who said it means the knowing the Yichudim could be acting the Yichudim. And the Rebbe said certain people to do certain Yichudim that we don't even know about, or certain Hoiros are from the Rebbe. Why after these 10 Mifzoyim? I'm inferring, I'm not saying as a fact, I don't know Yichudim. So I can't tell you as a fact, but I could infer from this letter that a lot of things the Rebbe told us to do are specific Yichudim. And a lot of people that Rebbe sent to specific countries with specific things, certain areas, those are yichudim. The Rebbe says so beferish about the Friedrich Rebbe sending. Anyway, this is it. I will beli neder give a standalone shir going through these inyanim. If you didn't listen to these 8 shiurim, I'm not sure you're going to get it, but I'm going to do it with Hashem on a slideshow for those that want to see it, for those that are not listening, but those that are watching it. And we'll be, and I'll be able to do it in the near future. My daughter's going to help me put it onto slideshow pages, and we're going to we just have to copy from what I wrote on a paper to put onto the computer and then do it. And then I'll conclude the Rebbe in Toshin on base. There came a group to the Rebbe from France, and the Rebbe then spoke that Shabbos. It's in the Sefer HaSichos, you can see it printed. The Rebbe then said that we've come to the stage where we can even elevate Tzarfas, we can even elevate France. It's the place where the Alter Rebbe was against the elevation. It was against the dealing with it. Not only America, we can even now elevate France, and look what's happening, etc., etc. Anyway, the Rebbe should help. We shouldn't just be interesting things to know about. We should bring it to the Maisa B'Poyel, in meaning that we should do as boinunus. We should zoltan mit avayis tefillah, and we should live like Lubavitchers, live like Shitas Chabad, as boinunus. And now that we're shaykh to bring this even the klal to teach to others, to learn ourselves to this, to think it through us, to have boinunus ourselves, to help others have boinunus, and to help others live ma'aseh mitzvahs, to help others live the way they'll live when Mashiach comes, which is by doing mitzvahs and by learning chassidus, by learning maybe should self-taket. It should be enough. What we've done until now should be enough, and there should be taket. That the aim was the ka'osimar, because we've done in l'chshei futza meinesecha chutza. We've been doing in even liyachid yichudim. We've been doing what we could do, what we've been told to do, what we know to do in the actions, in the ma'ases, in the ma'aseh mitzvahs. But we're doing our part. We're doing l'chshei futza meinesecha chutza, the part we know best. But the only part that we know, and we should be ready. We should be ready. The Alsimar, and fine. We'll continue the next series of Hashem next. I think we're starting next Wednesday. Yeah. I'll let you know what it is in advance.